Welcome back to America's Fractured Politics. So this is what it has come to. Jackhammers biting through centuries of architecture, while floodlights bleach the south lawn in white glare. Drilling sounds echoing through the shell of a house that once embodied the Republic's endurance. The east wing of the White House is demolished, not for repairs, not for restoration, but to make way for a Mar-a-Lago-style ballroom commissioned personally by Donald Trump. Columns that bore witness to generations of history are giving way to banquet scaffolds and soundstage trusses. The People's House is being redesigned as a party hall for a man who cannot stand the existence of any space not devoted to himself. It is, in every sense, the perfect Trump metaphor. A seat of civic duty ripped apart to build the ballroom. Where there was once the quiet dignity of public service, there will soon be chandeliers, mirrors, and velvet curtains. A gilded echo chamber for an emperor without a crown. This isn't mere architectural whimsy. It's a declaration of autocracy etched into limestone. The East Wing's marble dust might as well be the crumbling remains of American democracy. The official line calls it the Trump East Ballroom Project, a private public expansion aiming to modernize the White House for global diplomacy. But blueprints obtained by whistleblowers reveal the project's reality. A 24,000-square-foot hall modeled on Mar-a-Lago's Grand Ballroom, complete with gold-leaf ceilings, frescoed domes, and seating for 1,200 special guests. The plans show no mention of press facilities, First Lady's offices, or public tour quarters. Instead, there are VIP lounges, wine cellars, and subterranean event suites. The constitutional home of the presidency is being turned into a luxury venue. Contractors were told the concept came directly from Mar-a-Lago itself. Trump reportedly told donors at a recent dinner, Washington needs some glamour. What Washington actually needs, integrity, humility, democratic patience, has never crossed his mind. For Trump, spectacle replaces ethics. The ballroom will supposedly host state galas, though insiders say it's designed primarily for campaign fundraisers and private events. The man who once turned the presidency into a personal brand now wants to turn the White House into a personal estate. Watch the footage. Cranes stretching their long arms across the lawns. Old brick walls giving way to concrete pilings. Ornate lighting rigs rise where the press briefing corridor once stood. Workers remove century-old balustrades, while Trump honors donors snap selfies, waving from observation desk. This is what he calls legacy construction. This is how he immortalizes himself, not through leadership, not through policy, but through the destruction of shared spaces in pursuit of spectacle. Every generation of presidents understood stewardship. Theodore Roosevelt expanded the West Wing to separate government, business, from personal life. Kennedy, Carter, and Obama all respected the East Wing as the domain of civic outreach, the working quarters where First Ladies organized literacy drives, children's health efforts, and arts initiatives. Trump has erased that function entirely. The rooms that once hosted wounded veterans now exist on demolition lists marked Phase 2 Reinforcement Zone. History made inconvenient, plastered over with luxury. Preservationists who tried to intervene were blocked from the grounds. The White House Historical Association was told its mandate does not apply to future adaptive use projects. Future adaptive use. Bureaucratic poetry for corruption. They've stripped out fixtures donated by Eleanor Roosevelt's family, pre-war chandeliers restored under Nancy Reagan, and decorative panels salvaged from the Truman administration. Reconstruction. Those artifacts, by the way, are missing, not misplaced, missing. No tracking documents, no museum custody, just gone, swallowed by the same black hole where so many of Trump's mysterious donations end up. The blueprints call for an upper balcony fit for performance lighting and camera coverage, hinting that the ballroom's true purpose is broadcast theater. Imagine the visuals: crystal chandeliers, brass railings, Fox Nation cameras stationed along a marble dance floor where presidents once go. The aesthetic scream is unmistakable. Trump is rebuilding the White House as a Mar-a-Lago satellite, a profit palace and propaganda stage rolled into one. He's never hidden his contempt for history. Reporters were told he called the East Wing dead space, deriding it as a relic from another era. To him, civic relics are obstacles, museums are mausoleums, and heritage means only the parts of history that can be sold or branded. Replacing Roosevelt Corridor with a copy of a Palm Beach reception hall proves what Trumpism has always stood for. Replacing substance with show, democracy with decor. The financial trail reeks. Funding flows through a presidential facilities modernization initiative, a shell entity steered by White House advisor turned construction broker Jared Kushner, with major contracts awarded to donors connected to Trump's private network. No congressional appropriation, no public oversight, and when asked to disclose costs, aides insist it's privately financed through federal ledgers. Show money missing from the General Maintenance Fund of National Historic Properties. Taxpayers are subsidizing a ballroom disguised as diplomacy. Inside the West Wing, those few career staffers who remain speak of moral nausea. One describes seeing engineers scrape down historic facades to attach gilded frames imported from Mar-a-Lago. Another recounts being told to remove photos of First Lady's civic programs from walls that will soon display large oil portraits of Trump speaking at rallies. It's palace logic, not public service logic. Every gesture must amplify the ruler. This is authoritarianism rendered in architecture, the transformation of civic space into personal dominion. When political leaders in autocratic nations build monumental halls for themselves, it's never just decoration. It's spatial propaganda, an attempt to convince the populace that grandeur equals legitimacy. The ballroom's purpose isn't to host diplomacy. It's to stage obedience. Trump doesn't need allies to dance with him. He needs cameras to sanctify him. For all his mismanagement of government, Trump is the genius of destruction. He knows how to make ruin look luxurious. The gold leaf and chandeliers are camouflage, concealing the demolition beneath. His supporters see opulence and mistake it for achievement. They'll say he's restoring pride to the White House, as though pride were missed somehow, something that could be embossed onto ceiling plaster. The proposition of Mar-a-Lago ballroom in the White House is especially galling because Mar-a-Lago itself has always blurred the line between private greed and public office. During his first term, Trump used it as his alternative capital, hosting world leaders amid wedding banquets and pay-to-play gatherings. Now he's importing that same aesthetic rot directly into the nation's most sacred civic structure. Washington dissected by Palm Beach opulence. The People's House turned into a country club. Think of the message. The democracy's home is now a venue for the elite few who can afford the ballroom tables. State dinners once honored artists, teachers, and Nobel laureates. Soon they'll honor donors and golf partners, served under chandeliers modeled after those in Florida's resort of indulgence. The symbolism is corrosive. The merger of state and spectacle, of government and entertainment, of presidency and celebrity branding. The Trump era carved not in law, not in policy, but in imported Italian marble. Workers leak word that a private elevator is being installed, connecting the ballroom to Trump's personal residence suite, ensuring direct access from his quarters to the Grand Hall. An internal memo calls it efficient security routing. Call it what it is, a king's passageway. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the ghost of George Washington recoiling at the sight of this latter-day monarch, building his throne atop the ruins of democratic humility. It's impossible to ignore how this new hall mirrors the psychology of the man. Mar-a-Lago's ballroom was built after Trump read that the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach had a larger one. He wanted to surpass it. Now it's the White House turn. He cannot abide limits, historical or architectural. The Trump East Ballroom will be, according to marketing materials, leaked from the Trump Organization, the largest presidential ballroom in the Western world. That phrasing alone, presidential ballroom, feels like parody written by destiny. Some aides have tried to argue the ballroom could prove useful for national events, refugee summits, health forums, youth concerts. That's fantasy. Trump's instinct is always exclusion, not inclusion. Who will cross that velvet rope? Not the public, not journalists, only the courtiers of his political brand. The demolition of the East Wing isn't for America. It's for the echo chamber of applause that keeps his ego upright. and yet the destruction carries environmental and safety concerns. Reporters confirm that old asbestos insulation and lead-lined walls are being removed without oversight from the Environmental Protection Agency, which has conveniently declared the site a secure executive zone. Workers here speaking out, knowing that dissent equals termination. When regulations obstruct Trump's whims, regulations simply vanish. Another layer of law broken to pave a dance floor. Meanwhile, Trump's media surrogates flood the airwaves calling the project an act of patriotic renewal, comparing it to Kennedy's modernization of the West Wing. Kennedy's renovation expanded office space for governance. Trump builds a ballroom for pageantry. This administration calls it symbolism. They're right, though not in the way they intend. It's the symbol of a democracy being gutted, so one man can host another gala. Congress is barely stirred. A few lawmakers issue strongly worded letters while the bulldozers advance. Inspector General requests are pending review. The institutional checks that once defined our system are now props, scattered across the rubble. If the East Wing can fall to vanity, what's next? The Library of Congress converted into a campaign headquarters? The Lincoln bedroom renamed the Trump Suite? Every unopposed act of desecration becomes permission for the next. There's a nightmarish rhythm to it all. Footage of excavation by day, fundraiser invitations by evening. Trump's campaign emails boast of the new ballroom at 1600, offering donors the chance to be among the first guests to dance where history will be made. That's the line. History will be made, meaning history will be monetized. The destruction becomes the attraction, the ruin the commodity. America, once again, is pay-per-view entertainment. And you can almost imagine the inaugural gala when it's done. Gold drapes drawn back, the band striking up the national anthem rendered as a lounge medley, Trump descending the marble staircase, microphone in hand, boasting about the most beautiful ballroom in the world, maybe ever built. Behind him, the ghosts of Eleanor Roosevelt and Michelle Obama fade into plaster dust. Every tile of that ballroom will testify to our national drift. The shift from governance to self-promotion, from public service to private opulence. Democracy survives on modesty. Autocracy feeds on spectacle. Trump has always understood which wins attention. He's repurposed the presidency itself into the reality show of endless construction. 2 centuries of civic restraint give way to one man's branding rehearsal. The tragedy is how many Americans have accepted the show as substance. The bulldozers have become background noise. Outrage fatigue serves them well. Each new scandal arrives before the last one finishes collapsing. East Wing's destruction isn't a deviation. It's the culmination of an entire governing style. Tear down decency, pave it over with vanity, and call the rubble progress. Future historians will find it hard to decide what's more obscene, the physical act of replacing the East Wing with a ballroom, or the moral paralysis that allowed it. They'll write of this week the way we write of nations that built palaces that their people starved for hope. The ballroom will gleam, yes, but only for a time. Even marble fades. Arrogance decays quicker. Right now, as floodlights blaze over Pennsylvania Avenue, the new steel beams rise like the skeleton of an empire that doesn't know it's dying. And Trump, strutting across the construction platform, helmet embossed with the presidential seal, surveys his playground. Workers stand back as he gestures. Here is stage, there is chandelier, power translated into decor, democracy flattened into a dance floor. We've reached the absurd endpoint of the Trump era, the literal architecture of governance, surrendered to the architecture of luxury. The White House no longer symbolizes public virtue, but private indulgence. Somewhere between the contractor invoices and the marble deliveries, the American experiment slipped from stewardship to spectacle. When the ballroom opens, there will be music, champagne, and cheers from those who mistake glitter for greatness. But standing just beyond the security fence, you'll see what remains of the East Wing. Shattered stone, scattered bricks, the ghosts of letters once written to the First Lady by ordinary Americans seeking help. That was democracy in its human form. Worn, decent, service-oriented. Now replaced by acoustics tuned for adulation. And someday, when history reclaims its judgment, Those mirrored walls will not reflect triumph. They will mirror shame. Because behind every polished chandelier will linger the memory of what was lost, a White House that once belonged to the people, mutilated to host a man's ego under gold light. If there is any justice, a new administration will demolish this monstrosity and reconstruct the East Wing so that it reflects the values of the People's House. It is now left to us to use the primary effective means left to us: regular no King's Days, boycotts, and general strikes. Nothing will move short of these steps. We no longer have the luxury of waiting until next year's midterms. The crisis is here in full force, and we must meet it with intelligence and resolve. Thank you for listening, and please, never give up.